So, Feardragon, thanks so much for coming out. I really appreciate your time, man.
Yeah, of course, man. I love your content.
Thank you. That means a lot. So, starting off, you started your experience with StarCraft back in Brood War. Were you like any good at the game?
God, no. I think so. I played Brood War way back in the day when it came out and everything, but I was the player that didn't know probably until 2006 that you were supposed to make more workers. In my mind, I was like, why would you make units that just didn't have a good attack? That seems stupid. It seems counterintuitive. So I was terrible.
That, I think, is like probably a pretty common story for a lot of people who played Brood War.
Yeah.
Okay, so were you aware of like the pro scene or anything like that when you played Brood War?
No, so actually most of the time that I was playing Brood War, I had no awareness whatsoever of the Brood War scene, like competitive scene and the pro scene. And what ended up happening is around 2006, 2007, basically when I had this one guildmate in a game called Ragnarok Online, and she was really into specifically the Korean Brood War scene. So she would send me these highlight clips of Boxer and all these other players, and she would always do these 1 versus 7 because she was just so much better than us. I think she was probably, in my mind, around like C- on Icy Cup and stuff, if people know that. So, and she still plays random Brood War at like 1v or 4v4s and things like that. It's pretty good. But she would just play all these games, and that's kind of how I just got introduced to like competitive esports for StarCraft.
That's a really interesting story, honestly. So I've also heard it said that you were like pretty involved with Smash at some point. What happened with that? Why didn't you stay more engaged with Smash?
Yeah, so Smash was kind of just this thing that basically around the tail end of my high school years, I had like some random kind of like not super close friends, but just some friends at high school that I was like, hey, so there's like this Smash thing, and they kind of brought these small CRTs over to our school, and we just hook up GameCube controllers and be playing Melee. So I kind of learned about, like, oh, there's like wave dashing, L canceling, all these things. So I kind of got a little bit interested in it, and then around 2007 or so, I was like, oh, there's a new Smash game coming too. So then I started just getting more and more into it. So between, I want to say around like 2007 and 2010-ish, I got really into Smash in the sense that I was never very good at it, and I wasn't making content or anything, but I just was attending a bunch of different events and stuff. I got to attend Genesis 1 in like, because it was local for me, and I got to see Mango win and throw money up into the air. So it was a really, really fun experience, but I think basically what ended up happening was StarCraft came out. I also was kind of involved in League of Legends a little bit and got interested in that for a bit. So I sort of just had other things come up.
So yeah, of all the games that were out there, like, how'd you end up landing on StarCraft 2?
Yeah, I think StarCraft 2, it was a combination of that one guildmate that I talked about where she introduced me to StarCraft and it just seemed interesting. But actually, there were two specific things that got me hooked on getting super into StarCraft. One was that a separate guildmate from the same guild sent me a video of Day9 Daily, I think number 24 or 25 or something. And I ended up watching that. I'm like, this guy is really fun to watch. So I got super into Day9, and then I also discovered Husky StarCraft at the time. So I was basically just binging Brood War VODs for Day9 dailies and got super amped up and hyped up for StarCraft 2. So basically I was already invested in it by the time StarCraft 2 launch came in.
That is super interesting. So like your move to full-time esports was like a pretty bold move. I think you would say, a lot of people would say, have you been pretty happy with how it's turned out?
Yeah, it's been a lot more successful in some ways than I imagined, especially financially. I think it's been a lot better than I thought it would be. I have a whole video and stuff on that where I kind of talk about the exact finances, but I think it's also been very enlightening to kind of find out a little bit more about myself and kind of my style of things that I have enjoyed or haven't enjoyed. So I always feel like a little bit weird and guilty when I think, you know, I don't really stream like everyone else does. I don't put out tons of YouTube content and everything, but I'll try and do some like edited content and do things a little bit differently. And I watch a lot of events, so I feel like I'm relatively informed on what's going on. But yeah, it's been an interesting mix of things. I'd say overall positive though.
That's awesome to hear. So in your early days with StarCraft 2, you were mainly doing smaller online events, hosting your own tournaments, stuff like that. First off, how did you make the jump to being like a real premier caster, and then how does it feel to be a premier caster now?
Oh God, I think the jump technically, so I'd say there's kind of two jumps. There's one jump which is the premier jump. The other jump is getting more involved from being a casual StarCraft person and doing maybe for Funcast or Collegiate Star League or something, and then moving into doing competitive StarCraft. So I'd say the latter jump, the move from just super casual into doing competitive StarCraft and doing the online tournaments and everything, I think that was just kind of a gradual, natural thing for the most part. It took place over many, many years, but it really did start with something called an underrated team league, which was this weird team league for amateur, North American, a little bit of European events and stuff. And what ended up happening was this event basically was the place where I met Zombie Grub at. So both of us met over there, we casted like a little bit together and everything, and kind of grew from there. But how I kind of came up to the premier stage was basically in 2017, I got hired for WCS Valencia, and that was like a massive surprise for me. I think I had been grinding at it for a bit and kind of trying to figure out how to jump to the premier stage. Honestly, I don't 100% even know how it worked. Like, I think I got very lucky for the most part.
That is, honestly, I like the honesty. Yeah. So this is your first event casting with Tastosis, right?
Yes, first time working with Artosis or Tasteless, yeah.
Does that mean a lot to you?
I keep like a notepad on my phone of just every person I've ever commentated with, and this goes all the way back to the 2011 days where I was co-casting with like random college schoolmates and stuff in my StarCraft club. So it's nice to finally check them off the bucket list. I've already been able to cast with Artosis. Still haven't cast with Tasteless, but I've been on like desk segments, so I kind of count that a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the same frame.
Yeah, you know, I'm working with them.
Yeah, of course. What is your stance on the GOAT conversation? Who's the GOAT in your opinion?
Man, I've always sort of just leaned toward the Serral answer. I know people are always really sick of that answer, but I think the thing in my mind is that I can't think of any other player at any point in StarCraft history outside of maybe Flash that has had a period, like the length of the period of dominance Serral had, where he literally only dropped a single series to Neeb in an online tournament right before BlizzCon. By the way, awesome, it was Neeb that actually ended up killing him, or beating him there. But for, I think like 4 or 5 days short of an entire year, he played in a bunch of events. He didn't shy away from playing in big tournaments or anything, or even some of the random middle or smaller tournaments. And he just did not lose at all. No one else has done that outside of maybe someone like Flash. I think it's hard to dispute that. And also it was a multi-year reign, even outside of that kind of period of dominance of not losing any series. Even when he started losing series, he was literally just winning all the world championships. It's hard for me in my mind to dispute that Serral is the GOAT.
Yeah, I think it was like May of 2018 till November of 2018. He won every tournament he entered in. Something like that.
Yeah, it was
It's
absurd.
wild.
It was wild to watch that. I really do feel like I was part of watching esports history there.
Yeah. Do you think his lack of attempt in GSL is in any way a stain on his legacy?
I know that people feel that way, and I do understand the argument that basically everything happens in the non-Korean scene for the most part is a short form weekend kind of event if it's offline. Otherwise, it's an online thing that maybe takes place over the period of time like a DreamHack SC2 Masters or something. So I do get that. GSL is the long form tournament format. There's preparation involved in everything. But in my mind, all of those players have still already gone up against Serral, and I 100% get there's no reason why Serral needs to go to a foreign country when he's quite happy where he is, to live there for multiple months and stuff. Like it's just, I can fully empathize and understand why he just doesn't feel any need to do it. He's kind of already the GOAT. He's literally won multiple world championships. I don't think the GSL is really the thing that holds him back from being the greatest player. He's already such an amazing player.
Definitely understandable. So with the rise of players like Estrella and Trigger and the continued prowess of like Scarlet and Neeb, would you say NA is fielding more like legitimate contenders now than ever?
To be entirely honest, I think it's a bit of a mixed bag. I think there were actually a lot of points in the past. When I look back at, say, 2017, 2018, even 2019, I would actually go so far as to say that in some ways, the North American scene was more popping and more alive then than it is now. But it's in a weird way, because at that time, Neeb and Scarlet were basically these global contenders, and there weren't really any other global contenders. There's maybe like a Future or something that was starting to come up a bit, showing some promise. Maybe like Masa would occasionally make a little bit of a foray in the global scene, but there wasn't a lot. Moving into 2020 and 2021 and 2022, I think you started seeing Estrella coming up, and now we're seeing Trigger and stuff coming up. So there are more of these global contenders that can compete at the big stage. But I actually think the scene just below that was a lot more active in North America a few years ago rather than now. And I think it's kind of been a mix of things of how many different seasons of DreamHack SC2 Masters there are now for North America, or like literally for any of them, how many kind of events are going on. There has, COVID kind of killed things like Cheesadelphia and other things like that. So I do think the NA scene is kind of hurting a little bit just below a lot of the top contenders.
Who do you think are the hidden gems of NA right now? Or is there anybody you feel like doesn't get love that deserves it?
I think that the few names that do come to mind, the obvious one is still Trigger, because Trigger's, I feel weird because I sometimes feel like I have a different read from how other people perceive who has already broken out and who's already really well known. I think for a really long time I was like, everyone knows Estrella at this point, right? Like everyone knows Estrella is great. And then I somehow stumble across like 150 people who are just like, who is this Estrella kid? And I'm like, how do you not know him? Like he's a god. It's Max Angel. But Trigger, I'll just throw out there as that name where I'm like, I think everyone already knows him at this point, but Trigger's super duper sick. I actually think Disc kind of gets slept on a little bit in terms of how good he can be. He definitely comes to mind. I think Vindicta also, he's a little bit spiky in terms of performance, but I think Vindicta still has a sick potential.
Yeah, and he's been practicing a lot. Like I got the chance to talk to him a lot at Cheesadelphia and stuff like that. He seems to have a lot of passion, like relative to a lot of the other NA guys right now.
Yeah, I mean, Vindicta is like a sick content creator and stuff now, so I think he definitely has a lot of love for the game, and he's got a great YouTube channel and live stream and everything, so it's been great to see Vindicta kind of, or Migs, putting in the work.
Where do you stand on the Zerg Cabal debate?
I don't actually have a lot of weigh-ins outside of just memes on it, because I think there's two aspects of it. There's, the Nathanius, and then there's the Zerg, there's Nathanius, hiring situation. There's the Zerg, balance situation. So I'm not sure which one is specifically being asked about, but, one of them I just don't have much of a comment on, because I feel like I'm friends with a lot of those people. I don't have anything. I don't really want to jump into that one.
Yeah.
The balance thing, frankly, I feel like Katowice has already been pretty sick with the games and the quality of games and everything. I have never really had much of a balance opinion. I will say, everyone's putting out all these reactionary videos on 20-minute videos reacting to the balance patch and all that stuff. My video was 8 seconds long, and it was like, yeah, seems pretty good. And that's literally how I feel. I'm like, you know what? To me, the game for StarCraft is solving the puzzle of figuring out what to do. It's not solving the puzzle of how to balance it. I'm not worried about designing a maze. I just want to solve the maze. So I actually, frankly, I don't care about balance that much.
Yeah, I also feel like unless you're a really high-level player, your opinion almost doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I do tend to lean in that direction as well. Okay, so how do you feel about the health of StarCraft 2 right now in general? Do you feel like it's pretty good?
I think overall it's actually in a really good place for the most part. I think that there's some weird transitionary phase stuff that's happening where we're kind of waiting for some of the news on what's going to be happening with the circuit and stuff for the whole next year. We're also kind of waiting on a bit of the news on how good is maybe Stormgate going to be, or are people going to be moving over to Immortal Gates of Pyre when that comes out, or David Kim was supposedly working on some game, some RTS we just haven't heard anything about for a while now. So I think there's a little bit of uncertainty. But I think the overall health of the people who are here is really solid. I think that the people who love StarCraft are the ones that are here, and there's still a healthy audience. It's been great to see how many people are here at Katowice. It's been great to see how many people were at DreamHack Atlanta and stuff enjoying StarCraft. So I think we're still in a good spot.
Yeah, so I guess that kind of bleeds into the next question. What are your expectations for Stormgate? Anything in particular you're thinking?
Yeah, so I know that there has been a fair amount, and I think it's entirely fair skepticism that Stormgate has been pumped up a lot by a lot of content creators and everything. I think it's entirely fair. And I think it's also entirely fair to disclose, like, yeah, a lot of the content creators also have had inside peeks or access to a lot of the, like, the devs for Stormgate and everything. And a lot of them are, frankly, it's not even just that they were giving access, like, literally they're just some of our friends, like some of the old people, the old school esports people like Monk and stuff, or Ryan Shooter. I mean, shoot, I used to work with Ryan Shooter before he even joined Blizzard and stuff. So I think there's definitely some relationships that are involved there that maybe bias us a little bit. And I feel like it's worth disclosing that. But at the same time, I think the things that have me amped up about Stormgate are that whenever I talk with any of the engineers, whenever I talk with like the designers, or whenever I talk with like Tim Morton or either of the Tims actually, and I just get to hear them discuss what their plans are or the things, the issues that they're thinking about, that's the stuff that gets me excited, because everything that they say, I'm just like sitting there nodding along, and I'm like, let me think of a point, okay, where can I give some critical feedback? I'm like, it's literally just saying everything as I think of a problem. Like, as I think like, oh, ooh, that decision might cause some interesting like challenges or something in this space. They immediately just start talking about that without me even needing to address it. I think it's the thought process that's really encouraging me. So even though you haven't seen a lot of Stormgate, no one really has, outside of I think like Neuro, I guess. I think there's a lot of people who are hyped about it because they've had that experience where it feels like they're so in touch with the concerns that a lot of people who are diehard StarCraft fans would have.
Do you think major success for Stormgate will cause a bit of a collapse in StarCraft 2?
I really don't know the answer to that one. It's something I'm really dying to know the answer for as well. I've heard a lot of people have different speculation on this. I think, selfishly, my best world is that StarCraft 2 esports continues alongside Stormgate. I think it would be great. Selfishly, I say, because, you know, there's more events for me to work and things like that, and more things for me to be a part of. But also, you know, I love StarCraft 2, and I think that it's entirely possible that there are decisions that maybe people like about StarCraft but don't like about Stormgate, and maybe one game appeals to some people more than another. I think it's good to have choice, and I think that's actually the healthiest world I can foresee in the future. But I really don't know. I think a lot of it is just going to depend on where ESL kind of lands with the StarCraft deals for the following years. I think that's going to actually affect a majority of the success of StarCraft, as well as also, is Stormgate any good? Like that is still a question to be answered.
Who's your favorite active pro to play?
Ooh, the first name that comes to mind for me is Estrella, and I feel like the series of Estrella versus Raynor, even though he ended up losing here at Katowice, is such a perfect example of it. I'm a Protoss player, so I'm already a little bit biased toward a Protoss player. He's a North American player. He's an incredible human being. And these are all also factors to me because I enjoy watching people that I actually like on a personal level. That's like something I personally feel. But then you add all of that with the fact that Estrella is just one of the most innovative Protoss players I think that is in the scene right now. He is so willing to kind of experiment, and he acknowledges and knows that not every game or not every build order that you craft has to work in every situation. It's actually extremely useful to know if your opponent's playing a particular way, that you can abuse their playstyle with something that is not necessarily safe in every spot, but it works against what his opponent's doing. Estrella is great at that, and it makes for such fun and innovative games.
Ravi, thank you so much, man. You've been a supporter of my content since day one, basically. So that's awesome. Really great to get to talk to you. I won't take up any more of your time, but just thanks. Any closing words?
Yeah, thank you so much for doing these. Honestly, I feel like the dearth of these kind of interviews at events and stuff is always, it's so heartbreaking for me because I think back to what I used to watch back in like 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014, and it was, you know, the random like interviews that people would do for Team Liquid or whatever, or whether it be asking about like destructible rocks to random people and stuff, or whether it be, I don't know, like Rachel Seltzer like sitting down and asking questions with like Stefano as he suddenly just gets carried off on Huck's back or something. Like, it's just random stuff like that. I absolutely used to love that content. I still love that content, and I'm so glad to see you do it, man. So shout out to you, and shout out to all those StarCraft people who watch this kind of stuff.
Thank you so much, man. It means a lot.
For sure.
Cheers.
Cheers.